Hey guys, it's me, Dina, back coming at you again. So today's class is all about how we can gamble with hashtags the right way, because that's what they are. Hashtags are a gamble. They very rarely work. The whole reason we use them is trying to get other people who are searching for those amazing hashtags in order to stumble upon our work, but it's very difficult to get into the top searches, and even people who are very, very popular on social media still have a really, really hard time getting anyone to notice them via hashtags. So what I'm going to be talking about today is to restructure the way we think about hashtags, as to not necessarily use hashtags that are really popular, but more rethink our strategy. So in this class, we're going to go over the hashtags do's and don'ts, which is, yes, there are ways to fuck up hashtags. This is how people came up with the word shadow banned. There actually is no such thing as being shadow banned. That never existed. For those of you who went to a website to see if you were shadow banned, that's not technically a thing. What is a thing is there are such things as banned hashtags. And if you use a banned hashtag that Instagram has deemed as a violation of their terms of service, then yes, your posts will not do very well, and you will not see any more engagement on your account until you remove those bad hashtags. So that's what we're going to be talking about first and foremost. Then we're going to get into how to find the right tags for you, because we're saying the strategy with hashtags is kind of all over the place. So what we really need to be doing is figuring out smaller hashtags that are more niche, that are more about a community. Community-based hashtags work really well. For example, let's think of Women of Illustration. For those of you that know me, I also have a curated Instagram where I support female illustrators. That hashtag grew in popularity very, very quickly and has almost hit over 50,000 searches. So with something like that, it's big enough where people now actually just look at the Women of Illustration hashtag to find other female illustrators in an association, and also in order to get reposted on the Women of Illustration account. So we need to find more communities like this that have more niche, that are talking more about what we have to offer specifically. And that's how we're going to think about hashtags. No more of the days that we're going to be using hashtag cute, hashtag art. That's not going to get you anywhere. Something a little bit more refined and something that is more niche is always going to help you out better, because it's not about quantity when it comes to followers. It's always going to be about quality. Again, it doesn't matter if you have 100,000 followers if you're not making any money off of them. What you want is almost 1,000 true fans that are helping you actually pay your bills. So we're going to be going into how to find pages based on interest and how to start mining tags from our competitors, because figuring out hashtags is actually quite a bit of work, but there are a bunch of shortcuts that we can take in order to make this entire process much easier. But before we just do a deep dive into today's lecture, I first want to do a critique. We're going to do a critique based on the homework that you guys had last week. So last week's assignment was all about writing. We were having a 100-word challenge. So it's been 4 days. So depending on how many times you post in a week, you should have a couple examples for me to look at, see your grid, see not only that you're writing long, but that you're replying to the comments that you're getting. There's no way for me to prove that you've been talking to DMs, but at least we can at least review your captions and see if you're doing them right, and then give you any feedback to improve them the next time you write a caption, pretty much. That is I did a whole story of women in illustration, and I completely forgot to use any hashtags at all. Well, it's really interesting because there's actually a pattern of larger accounts don't actually use hashtags, especially if they create content that's of a sensitive nature. If they create content around sex or drugs, like weed, for example, a lot of those hashtags that you would think are totally fine are banned and keep continually to be banned. So a hashtag that was fine last year may be banned this year. And we'll get into that a little bit later. It's just something that we all have to keep in mind is some people actually don't use hashtags at all, and it's totally fine. And that's part of their strategy. But for the rest of us, we can why not? Why not throw some hashtags out there and see if it can get us anything? Because even today, just from me using hashtags yesterday, I was being reposted on new accounts today just because I use those hashtags. So it's definitely something that can help. All right. Is a picture of a hallway. All right. Could this be my last Inktober post? It seems to be ruining my life. I actually can't believe how much time it takes to do just one post. I started this drawing with the intention of doing it with my Zing brush pen, but then seeing as I have to be somewhere at 4 p.m., I ran over in Procreate. I'm already not interested. Honestly, this just seems Like, there's nothing here that caught me. I feel like the picture doesn't interest me at all. It interests me in the point where I'm like, ooh, it's an empty room. What does that mean? Yes, I know I can click this button and see more, but just from my initial reaction of like seeing this picture, which is a fine illustration, like, could this be my last Inktober piece? Because you immediately lose me after the emoji. I can't actually believe how much time it takes just to do one post. And I started drawing with this intention with my zig, and then you start going into too many details. Like, this entire thing, I think if you just ended it with, I can't believe how long it takes you to do one post. This is like a little bit too much information here. And then right here, honestly, I feel like every post I've done about my Monday challenge has been basically me hinting at how flipping hard it is. Oh, even better. I feel like this whole paragraph doesn't even need to be here because you get to the point in your second paragraph. So honestly, I feel like every post about my Motober challenge has basically been me hinting at how flipping hard it is. The stress I feel around my family and loved ones is just simply because I'm not fulfilling this bogus challenge. Okay, this is super interesting paragraph. Love this paragraph. Then you can go on to say it takes me 4 to 5 hours from prompt to post. I love that. Showcasing it actually takes time to do your illustrations. A lot of us are very eager to hear how long it takes you to do things. I love how you censor yourself. You don't have to censor yourself if you don't want to. Literally cursing in your posts, nothing's going to hurt you. The only thing is you can't promote like a native advertisement with a curse word in it. That's really the only thing. My website was supposed to have been completely rehauled by now. My wedding plans are falling off by the wayside. And now I hear I'm feeling like a fucking idiot and swearing on the internet. Enjoy these fucking stairs. This is a funny story. I really love it. I wish you almost ended it. You almost started it where you ended it. Like, I feel like such an idiot trying to do these daily prompts. Here's some fucking stairs. Like, I would have been so interested to read this story if you had started with that. Like, just like you almost want to think of like the intro to your caption has to be the most interesting thing. You have to give me all the details. It has to be something that's like makes me want to read more, where it kind of did at first, but I'm trying to think you have to keep in mind when I give these critiques is I'm not trying to give them to you as a teacher. I'm trying to give them to you as a user. So I can tell you right off the bat, I would have scrolled right past this post. I think the stairs is pretty and like it's a good bit, like obviously the prompt list is like stupid. So, but I would have really enjoyed like that joke at the front. Like, I'm having such a hard time doing this daily prompt, so here's some fucking stairs. I'd be like, oh, that's weird. Why does she have to draw stairs? And then I would have been able to get to know you and really like be able to relate to this and stuff. I'm still gonna like it though. But, you know, the good thing is you wrote these long captions, and it's really interesting when you do write long captions, you start to notice that people's comments are longer too. It's something that I think is really cool. Like, look at all this engagement you're getting. And mostly people, I love that I see a lot of other classmates chiming in here. That's so nice. That are really going in and like talking about it and sharing their experiences. This is how I like measure success. I very rarely measure success by likes. I measure it by like the comments and the connections you're making with people. So aside from my like super nitpicky things about the captions, this was a very good post and you did a great job. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Natalie, if you switched around the paragraphs, I think that would have been better. Yes, everyone feels the tense. It gets very tense for wedding planning. I feel you myself. Marla is like, are these the stairs for Married with Children? I don't know. It could be anything. I just see dirt. That'd be funny though. There's like a pineapple illustration up here. I like how she's like, fuck this fucking prompt list. I'm over it. All right, let's move on to Alice. Okay, just in case there's audio.
He has a unique mind, but also a unique heart. Blue Engine is reimagining the traditional classroom experience for students by maximizing the power of multiple adults in a single classroom.
It's like a commercial.
Blue Engine's team teaching model supports and enables teachers to create a more personalized classroom experience.
Personalized classroom experience.
This human-centered way of learning
human-centered
students to bring their unique selves to the classroom.
Okay. All right, let's read your caption. An Inktober interlude. Not a very good title. This is not an example of a good title. Okay, today animation project I finished a couple of months ago. Working on a non-creative job that paid more, but David reached out with this illustration opportunity. There's no way I could do both, and I was fearful of taking the creative plunge once again. So I love that you're sharing more about yourself. I don't think this is a very good title. I would personally be like, oh, an Inktober interlude. It's like, hey, you know that thing that you've been following me for? Fuck you. Here's something else. That's what that tells me as a follower. I think it would have been better if you would have started the conversation with something more of like, here's a client project that took me out of my comfort zone this year, or something like that. Like, I would have been like, oh, what is okay, so immediately I know, first and foremost, this is a client project. So it immediately makes sense. So instead of telling me what it's not, tell me what it is. right? And then just tell me a little bit more of like the emotions that you're feeling around it, which you get into, but I just want you guys to get in the habit of leading more with the point. Yeah, I really think that's really the only issue. I mean, aside from this client work, the illustrations and stuff that you did are super cute. I don't like I think it's a bad advertisement, but that's not what we're talking about. So let's check out your engagement. Dun, 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 dun. I love that even though this person just sent you emojis as a comment, you went ahead and like actually tried to engage with them. So that's great. Cool. So you got, it's always, you always get more views than likes. That's pretty normal. So I think this was a great attempt at writing more because I know you were feeling uncomfortable about writing captions. So I hope this was like a good challenge for you, a good experiment. Okay, so let's go ahead and check out Heaven's Mechanic. Is there audio? Oh, he's mad. Whoa, what's happening? And now he's a banana! That'll teach you. Oh, fuck you, grape. Bananas always win. Oh, what a cool, like... That's so cool. I love that. It's Be Nice to Bananas Day. That's not a... Come on. What? It's Be Nice to Bananas Day. You speak English? Come on, man. Guys. I have no idea what this means. Okay, let's continue. This is from animation series number 87. When doing an animation workshop with kids, they often come up with the most nonsensical, horrific ways of causing damage to the characters. You had a workshop with a group of kids. This is great. So you're talking about your workshop with kids and how, like, when they're in charge of, like, dictating what happens in the animations, it's always much more messed up than what an adult would think. That's interesting. I think maybe an issue you guys have is maybe what we need to start doing is when you're writing these titles or the first two sentences, you do it last. Maybe instead of you guys doing it first, maybe that's the issue. Like, go ahead and like write out your story and then try to figure out a really good way to summarize that story. And that should be the title versus I feel like you're using titles that are often the first thing that comes to your mind. And then you start to get into like the meat and potatoes of the post. If you had started this with, kids come up with the most nonsensical and horrific ways to cause damage to characters, that is so much more interesting to me than like a sentence that's horribly grammatically incorrect. You know what I'm saying? This would have been so much more helpful. I really think it would have made a huge improvement. And I love all these little Microsoft Paint animations. I definitely feel like in every single time you post these, you should say at the top, Microsoft Paint illustrations, like, just because I think it's such an interesting selling point. But as far as everything else in the storytelling, you're using this nice period to separate your paragraphs. This is great. And I'm just gonna read the last sentence. When she finished with her metaphor, I thought she was going to say something like, be wary of them, they can smell your fear. You ended it on a joke. I love that. And we'll be able to get into some better hashtags you could be using after today's. Okay, you are replying back. Okay. I was like, you didn't reply to comments, but I see that you are. Okay. Cool. Nice long comments. No, definitely title it. So Heaven's Mechanics is like, should I not try to title it? Just because one time you did something and it didn't, and you didn't get an A++, that's ridiculous for you to say, I'm not a writer. I just shouldn't have titles. That makes no sense. That's ridiculous. The first time you try to tie your shoes, you're like, fuck it, Velcro for life. No, you fucking learn how to tie your shoes. This is the same thing. So Jake is like, he kind of likes the clickbait title. See, I don't think that's a clickbait title at all. It makes you want to know more. Yeah, like, I think clickbait titles can work all the time. My favorite kind of clickbait titles is when they're obviously clickbait. Like, if you don't read this message, you're gonna die today, or something crazy like that. That's what I usually, like, if you're gonna go clickbait, go, like, all the way. Or, like, misspell something to try to troll people, or, like, that's my personal aesthetic. Like, that's my personal, like, humor. So Studio is offering some advice, okay? You've been finding getting the title, quote-unquote title, is easier if I've written the whole thing, and then I find the line that jumps out best, and I try to rearrange it and edit it. Yeah, totally. Yeah, she's getting lots of likes. We all agree. All right, let's see what else we got. All right, we got Jean. Nice little picture of a print. All right, I have a difficult time focusing on just one thing at a time. I usually do 2 things, 3 sometimes, and not only at work, but during downtime at home too. When I draw, I listen to training videos. When I do dishes or clean up, I listen to an audiobook. When I watch TV, I knit or sew. When I edit photos, I listen to podcasts. In the 7 hours it took me to draw this succulent, I watched the first two. Oh, letter shops. Yes. Start to listen to the power of habits. Nice. It was awesome and I love it. But it also pulls me away from the meditative. Okay. What do you think about multitasking and how do you manage your focus? Okay. So this is so interesting. You guys are so much better at writing the last thing in your caption than you are the top thing. So for a lot of you, I kind of just want to delete like your first two paragraphs and then take the last paragraph and put it on top. It's a pattern that I'm seeing. Like if you would have had it something like, what do you guys think about multitasking and how you manage your focus? Because it's doing one of two things. One, it immediately tells me that you're talking about the purpose behind the artwork and not necessarily like how you made it or that this print's for sale or anything like that. So it's very interesting to me because you would not think that's what you're going to be talking about multitasking in a picture of a frame, right? So something to keep in mind, like what's my expectation for reading this? So saying I have a difficult time focusing on just one thing at a time. I have an issue with just because you use the same word twice, but it doesn't like reel me in. So I think this definitely would have been better if you just move this last thing to the top, because you have to remember as well, if you have any sort of call to action, it's a question. You want people to tag their friends. You want them to like, you want them to comment, you want them to buy your product. You always have to put that call to action at the very, very top too. And also, so it would have actually probably been more likely for people to actually do your action, because some people don't even, no matter what you do, no matter how good your title is, they will never hit that read more little button. So then you could have gotten like more engagement. I know, Jean, when you first read the paragraph out loud, I was so bored. I was bored too. This is why I like doing these things live, because you could see me just reading and I'm like, oh, I hate this. Like, this is not good. And it really, like, even for my own stuff, like if I'm writing a caption down, I always have to read it out loud before I post it, because sometimes there's some sort of weird connection in our brains where we just don't get it. Like we can skip over grammatical errors so much quicker when we're just reading it, but when we say it out loud, we immediately are like, okay, the cadence of this is wrong. I need a comma here for a pause. Like you can just figure out stuff a little bit better, and you can definitely figure out the cringe factor. The cringe factor. If you feel cringy as fuck just saying this out loud to yourself, can you imagine how people feel when they read it without you being around? You know what I'm saying? So definitely some tips to keep in mind. This is great. All right, so let's move on to Noelle. This is just a cool picture. Like right when she posted it in the chat, I was like, this is a fucking cool illustration. I really, really like this. I had moths on my mind last night after drawing the butterfly card. Not interesting. Not a good title. This is a journal entry. Hate it. No. Such a great illustration. I had moths on my mind last night after drawing the butterfly card. Think of it like this. Like if someone texted you, I had moths on my mind last night after drawing the butterfly card. And because you know when you get a text, it doesn't show you the whole text, just shows you the beginning. Would you feel an urgency to read that text right now? Or would you most likely be like, I'm going to finish pooping, I'm going to maybe get to this later? So maybe that's something we could all, like that's another little thing we can help with. Okay, so I'm going to keep reading. Butterfly card from my friend Heidi's Animal Oracle deck. Earlier, a little mouth had been waiting on my car door when I left work, and my gut gave me a feeling that she was meaningful. Oh, that's sweet. See, right there, this is great. Earlier, I would just say, a moth waited on my car door when I left work, and my gut gave me a feeling that she was meaningful. This is so much more interesting to me. If that was the beginning of my text from my friend, I'd be like, are you about to tell me some magical fucking story? Like, what is this? Like, I'm excited. Like, I'm intrigued. So yes, I think if you would have started it here, and I do like the fact that you put a butterfly like emoji here too. I feel like it helps, even though it's stupid, we all have access to emojis, but if you use just the right one, like the perfect one in like the beginning of a title or paragraph, it helps give the user like a little bit more of information about what you're talking about. So I do like that you have that here. Okay, so drawing that card felt exciting. I asked if I could be a moth instead. They're both little creatures, cute, cute, cute. When I read the official Inktober prompt was precious, this image came to mind immediately. Okay, I love this. I love that you're using dashes and so you can actually have, you know, spacing in your paragraphs. I love that you're writing a lot. All right, let's read the end. I'm a cute moth now with a cool pink spot on the wings. I've eaten a moth before because I like being absurd. Also, I was drunk. See, I'm right again. If you would have started this conversation with, I've eaten a moth before because I like being absurd and I also was drunk. Immediately. Okay. I will hold my turd in for 3 seconds to fully focus on what you wrote me. I think that's really funny. I think something we really should think about is when we do our captions and we're figuring out our titles, it really should just be the most absurd, the most interesting section. Almost think of it like a pull-out quote. Maybe that's how we have to start thinking about that's the ultimate clickbait. Is like where the fuck did this sentence come from? Like, please color me intrigued. I'm excited. My only issue with this caption is nothing to do with like how interesting it is or how long it is. It really has to do with I feel like there's no action for me to take on my part. Do I feel like I got to know you a little bit better? Sure, of course. That I think it's a check mark. But when I read that story, there's nothing in me that wants to comment. Maybe unless I have like a connection with moths or something like that, there's nothing that I'm like, oh, that relates to me, or let me tell you a story about moths or anything like that. So I think maybe if you painted a picture of like, have you ever felt this way, or like something that was crazy that happened to you or something like that, I feel like I would have had much more of a reaction to comment, or else people are forced to only comment on the illustration itself. Like this one person that just says, "This is dope. This dope." Oh, I love the American slang, my friends. Yeah, because even Studio is like, she can't resonate with it, so she's saying, "I love how the moth symbols are really resonating with you. I can't comment on this. There's something about me involved here, but I can see that you're resonating with this." Right? And Emmy right here too. I really like this character and especially love the little fangs. You're forcing people to just comment on the art since there's nothing for them to connect to with the caption, there's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, you always want people to obviously appreciate the illustration. That's the main fucking thing. But is it double trouble if you get like a reaction via the caption? That's when people feel really connected to you, because anyone can double tap an image and like an image and tell you why they like it. But for them to relate to you to why you like it or why you made it, I think is much more powerful. And I think this has little to do with what you wrote, just with more of how you wrote it. I mean, this could just be an example of like, this is just what it meant to me, but something just to think about, like, how can you create action or stir up an emotion by the end of the caption? Okay, so let's look at Mike's stuff. I love this photo. I just think Mike is so handsome and he should just be in the picture all the time. Because I remember when I first met you, Mike, at Creative South. I didn't recognize you right away because you didn't post a lot of pictures of yourself. And I met you, I'm like, he's so charismatic and nice. And his friends are all really cool and he's super handsome. I'm like, I didn't know any of this before I met him. And I felt like I didn't get a chance to really know you until I met you. Sex sells, Lisa says. So this is an example of something that I would normally be like, he just writes jazzed up. But because your face is so, like, you're just so full of, like, light and happiness in this photo. This is the difference between, like, if you have like an actual facial expression on your face with a title, you can get away with so much more shit because you're like, well, what is he so jazzed about? You know what I mean? So it's so different. All right, so Jazzed Up, he mentions the brewery is killing it right now. They've been constantly putting out some of the most interesting and straight up delicious beers around. This came up on my feed and I actually read it earlier. How they like mix up sour and IPA. There's no way those two beers go together, right? But in this case, I just love it. And it's like a little advertisement, which is nice for future potential clients to see. Like when you work with a client and you can sense that person is proud that they work with that client and they're advertising and, you know, being vocal about that brand, that paints such a good picture for you because it's like, oh, so not only am I getting this artist to create this design for me, but I'm also getting this promotion out of it too. So it's like a double thing. This is the kind of content you definitely need to be posting more often when trying to get like chalkboard client work. So funny. Natalie, guys, just get some pro model pics done and your engagement will go through the roof. I'm saying, like, you don't even have to be good looking, guys. Like, you could be an ugly fucker, man. It doesn't matter. It's just people you always get a lot of engagement with a smiling face. So if you're able to put yourself with your artwork as well, you might as well, right? If it's possible. So let's read this last sentence. Tomorrow's lineup includes peach, apple cider, donut. That sounds cool. Apple cider donut and chocolate chip banana pancakes. Stoked to finally participate in one of their infamous releases. This is fun. Okay, so you got a decent amount. Yes. So my favorite thing about this is you're talking about like crazy beers. You're talking about this combination. So like I'm going to comment on a few things as a follower. I'm going to comment on the fact, hey, good job. You did this client piece to oh, I really love the lettering and how you made this, to, oh, those are crazy beer combinations. Like, I'd love to try something like that. There's so much in a person who's reading this that can come back with possible comments for you. So I think you did a really good job. The only thing I would say is if this did not have such a cute man in the photo, you would have had to try harder for this title. I gotta give you your shit. I think I would have been like, I got drunk off the weirdest beer this week, or something like that. I think would have been so much more interesting. I wish it was commissioned by them though. Yeah, we don't know that though. We don't know that. All right, last one before we get started on our lecture. All right, gaining self-confidence points from strong women. Ooh, I'd read that. Yeah, I'd read that all day. Gaining self-confidence points from strong women. I'd be like, ooh, what's strong women? Like, that's my immediate thought. All right, gaining self-confidence points from strong women. Everyone has their own idols they admire, along with the way that helps them inspire and keeps you hungry for the process. A little grammatic issue, but not too bad. It doesn't matter if it's someone online or someone you see every day. It's nice to know that they exist, and even better when they encourage you. Oh my God, I'm so hooked in this caption right now. This is so nice. Find someone in your life that helps you lift you up, guys. Don't be afraid to face big things. You don't have to go out alone. This is so nice. Do you have anyone that inspires you? Tag them in the comments and give them some love. That's so nice. Again, if you're going to put a call to action, put it at the top. So if you could have been like, gaining self-confidence from strong women, tag the people that inspire you, and then told the story, you probably would have gotten a little bit more engagement. Yeah, so you only got like a little bit just from other students, but hey, at least we're here together to lift you up, because I know you just started this account. All right, cool. I'm digging it. You guys did a good job. All right, hashtag do's and don'ts. So let's talk about the do's, guys. So number 1, use all the hashtags. You have 30 spots opened to win the lottery of getting on the Explore page. You might as well use all of the slots. They're free. They cost you no money. You might as well just use them all. I do a thing where I use 29 just to make sure that I don't go over 30, because you get penalized. I don't know why I do this. Just in case I'm bad at counting or something, I'm like 29. That's just me personally, because I'm just dumb. I make dumb mistakes like that. Second is, I want you to naturally use some hashtags throughout your caption first and then put them in a separate section. And I've done so much research on this. There is no difference. And anyone who tells you differently is stupid and they're wrong. Don't you love when people say that? Whoever doesn't agree with me is stupid and wrong. From what I can tell, from talking from like an actual employee at Instagram, there is no difference between putting your hashtags in the first comment versus putting them into the caption. You get no points, you get no demerits, nothing happens. You just have to make sure that you can't have more than 30 and that you're using the hashtags that aren't banned hashtags. That's the only thing. I personally put them in my description only because I use a scheduling app and I'm typically not awake because my posts go out really early to put my hashtags in the first comment. And for me, it's a lot more organized in that way. That's another thing. So Natalie's coming in with the question, what happens if you use all 30 and then someone is like using hashtag yes? So if someone else uses a hashtag on a comment, it does not hurt you at all. And it actually doesn't work. So like if you put hashtag women of illustration on a post, that is not going to rank for women of illustration. It's only going to let you see that hashtag. It's not going to actually let you rank for it. I actually read that today, saying if someone else uses the hashtag, it doesn't work that way. So it doesn't hurt you if they do that. So when you're going ahead and you're typing out your caption, you go ahead and you just naturally put it in the thing. Like it makes sense. Like if you're using, hey, I made this lettering piece today, you might as well put hashtag hand lettering, right? Like if you're going to use a really popular hashtag like art or illustration, you might as well just use it as a hashtag. Because that way it kind of lights it up. It gives a little bit of a decoration. And it's got the blue highlight. And it's, you can look at it and it attracts the eye. Obviously, you don't want to go crazy with this. I think something like a couple normal ones, like whatever your branded hashtag is, a hashtag that's really specific to what you're doing, or maybe like a general hashtag. Just saying if there's an availability to put it in your caption, like literally in your, like what you're typing, then do that. Thirdly, always have a branded hashtag for user-generated content. So this really only applies to people who are offering something for money. If you're currently in the section where you're just in it for the followers, sometimes it doesn't make sense that you have a hashtag. People have hashtags for a few different reasons. If you have a curated page, then typically you want other people to use that hashtag so that way you can easily organize people who are submitting content to you to repost. That's normally why people have a branded hashtag. Or if you're a brand or you have a product, you're selling posters or something like that, you have a branded hashtag that you want customers to use when they're taking photos of themselves with the product they just bought. That way you can easily follow that hashtag, because we can easily follow hashtags now. You just can hit any hashtag you want, hit the follow button on it. It'll pull up in your grid, in your feed, just like anyone else that you're following. And then you can just see people who are posting about you and the products that they bought, and then you can easily repost that content and put it on your own page. And then when it comes to client work, using a branded hashtag actually makes a lot of sense. So that way, when the client is talking about the work that you made for them, not only are they hopefully mentioning you, which I'm assuming you're putting that in your contracts. If it's not in your contract, please put it in your contract immediately, that anytime, even if they bought you out the usage rights, you always need to make sure you can use it in your portfolio, and always make sure that anytime they mention that piece of art, they have to tag you on social media and use whatever hashtag that is your branded hashtag. Or if it's on, you know, a website where you can have a clickable link, have a link to your website, to your portfolio. That's something I didn't put in my contracts until like 2 years ago. I've been doing this for 6 years. So we all make mistakes. So you want clients to be able to use that hashtag for the same reason. So that way, when you see them using that content, you can go ahead and easily repost it as user-generated content on your feed. Oh shit, I like the follow feature for tags for sure, but using that with the brand tag is smart. Yeah, Jake, for sure. So for me, I never have like a hashtag for myself, even though people have used it. So you might be surprised if, for those of you who have more than 1,000 followers, you may have noticed that people are already using hashtags for you. So there are people out there who use hashtag Dina Rodriguez or hashtag Lettershop without me ever saying use these hashtags. I'm never going to update my computer, ever. Eventually, one day when I have time to do it. I found that really interesting. It was like, oh, so people might be using hashtags for you without even mentioning you. And that's another reason why I like using hashtags, because people are dumb, okay? So sometimes they'll repost your art and they won't mention you or tag you, but then they'll use your name as a hashtag. So it's like, oh, there's this other way for you to get some sort of notification or be able to track that piece of art being reproduced or reposted. So that's kind of nice. So some things to keep in mind. You've sold tea prints and no clue who's these people are using my tag. Yeah. So it really does help if you have a hashtag. For me, I put hashtags around my series. So like right now I'm all about babe meme. So I have a hashtag babe meme, and that's actually, I've found more people reposting my art from me looking at the babe meme hashtag than I am being physically tagged in photos. Because a lot of people on the internet, they don't know the proper etiquette for reposting. They don't know all these things. But just so you guys know, etiquette for reposting are a few things. You must tag the artist directly in the photo. You must tag the artist in the first line of the caption. I find it incredibly rude when people repost art. You're using my content to get more followers, but then you bury my tag below the hashtags. Like it'll say something like a caption, hey, follow us, blah, blah, blah. They'll have a call to action like use this hashtag to get featured on our page. And then at the very bottom, it'll say artist credit, Lettershop. I'm like, fuck you, dude. No, like you have to put my name in the first. It needs to be above the see more link. And that's something that we'll get into to make sure that like if you're paying for posts or if you're asking to be reposted, to make sure that you're saying these things. So that way when they do repost your artwork, you're getting the most bang for your buck, right? So some things to keep in mind. So number 4, always check your hashtags before you use them. There are too often do we just like go into Instagram and we're like writing our caption in the app, which we already said last class, do not do that. Always write your captions beforehand in like a word processor or something. And then you choose your hashtags in the first comment and you're basing it off searches. You're not checking that hashtag to even make sure that your content is even relevant. Because, and I've made this mistake myself, I'll use the wrong I'll use a hashtag, I think it's relevant to art and lettering, and then it ends up being like a porn thing. So it's like I'm using my coveted 30 hashtags for tags that A, don't make sense or align with my audience at all, or are the wrong audience completely, or Like, it's just a completely different thing than I thought it was. So there'd be no way that I would even rank for that hashtag anyway. Like, if I'm using a hashtag that I think is for art, but it's actually for models, you're not going to see my illustration and think it's going to make sense with that hashtag. And this brings us back to banned hashtags. With the functionality of being able to follow a hashtag also came the functionality to hide that post from ranking for that hashtag, and that introduced banned hashtags. So what we all can do right now, if you click on a hashtag, you see the top posts, you can click on that post, you can hit the 3 dots in the top right corner and click do not show this post for this hashtag. If someone does that more than a few times on your post, you just lost engagement. And anytime you use that hashtag, it is not going to work for you because people have said, no, you are using this hashtag incorrectly. So I do not want your content to show up for this. This is especially true if you're using a community hashtag for the wrong reasons. People who have heavily curated Instagram pages and you're using, let's say, Type Gang, which is a hashtag that's for a curated page for hand lettering artists. If you're posting something that's not hand lettering, and it's like, oh, this shirt you made that you put on a t-shirt that's not hand lettered, that's just like in Helvetica New, I, as the curator, or anybody else for that matter, would see that post and be like, oh, you're using this hashtag wrong. That's not what this is for. I'm going to remove it. Could actually hurt you. So that's why it's so important for when you're trying to figure out what hashtags you use, that you actually physically type them into Instagram, you look at them, you see first to make sure that it's not banned, which you can easily see. You'll have top posts, and then you'll have recent posts. If you look at recent posts for a tag and you actually see pictures, you're good. But how you know what's banned is it'll physically tell you. It'll say, this post, like this hashtag has been removed because it is in violation of Instagram's terms of use. It will say something like that. So that's how you check. And the only way you can know this for a fact is if you fucking physically type it in Instagram. It's so annoying. I'm very much aware. But what we're going to be doing is creating hashtag groups. So that way we can kind of do some of this work up front. So we have less work later on. So we're not spending like an hour to look at hashtags every single time we want to post something on the internet. That would be incredibly frustrating. Okay, so Studio comes in with the question, oh my God, people do not know how to repost. When folks tag me in a comment, I'm thankful, but then I see their previous posts and there are no art tags. If folks have less followers than me, do I let it slide or do I call them out? I think it's always a good idea to call people out. For future reference, if someone is, and I find that all the time, especially with weed accounts, they'll post other people's artwork and they won't credit that artist. And I don't think they're being malicious, and I don't think they're trying to do anything wrong on purpose. I really just think that they're naive. And this is most common in like really low accounts that have like less than 1,000 followers. So if you do see a page that is not giving proper artist like tags, just reach out to them and be like, hey, I really appreciated you reposting my piece and tagging me. That was really nice of you. But I did notice that you haven't been crediting other artists. You just very nicely tell them what they should be doing. So that way, because when you tag someone else in your work, it not only is nice because people can get credit for the work that they did, but it also helps you with the algorithm and it helps the both of you. Because it's showing a different connection. It's showing that you have a sense of community with your work. And so if you're constantly tagging people in all of your pieces that you're posting on your curated page, that only means Instagram's going to help you rank in the algorithm because you have people interacting with your content. So if you frame it in that way, there's no reason anyone's like, no, I don't want more followers. I'm good. Like, they're not going to do that. So yes, I do think anytime you do see that, take some time. I have a copy and paste message that I just use. Eventually, I'm sure you'll have plenty of copy and paste messages. It's just something that you make over time because you're tired of repeating yourself. Okay, so we know that we have to check our hashtags. We have to physically type them into Instagram. And then I also want you to check your tags to see what works. And what I mean by that is when you post something on Instagram, go ahead before the day is over, like within, let's say, the first hour. Let's go ahead and make that the mark. After the first hour you post something on Instagram, I want you to look at your insights, okay? And because we've all talked about you really need to upgrade to a business account in order to get analytics on Instagram. You swipe up, you see your insights, and if you see that you're ranking for hashtags, it'll literally say, it'll say hashtags and then how many people came to your account because of hashtags. Obviously, if that number is 0, your work is done, there's nothing to do. But if it says something like 20, 40, 60, 100 hashtags, Then I want you to go ahead and start clicking on your hashtags and to see if which ones you ranked for. Because it's only been an hour, so typically if you were at the top of something, you should still be relatively at the top. Sometimes you're gone in like 3 minutes, sometimes you sit up there for 3 days. It just depends. So you click on your tags. And this is for those of you who are really struggling and you're really like, fuck, I'm trying to grow followers. You have to look at this stuff in order to know what's working so you can do more of what works. There could be a tag that you just took a chance on that you'd never use, then you know, okay, an hour later after I post, I'm going to check that tag, I'm going to click on it and see if I ranked for it. And that's something I used to do a lot in the beginning of my Instagram career. And now I don't so much have time for it, but when I do, like this week, I made new Instagram hashtag groups. I don't know if they work yet, so I'm back in that mode of like checking my hashtags and making sure that I'm using the ones that work for me. So those are your do's. Use all 30 hashtags. Use them naturally within your comment before you do your sea of hashtags. Create your own branded hashtags so that way people aren't using the wrong one, so that way you can have user-generated content. And whatever that branded hashtag is, make sure to use it always in the caption of every post that you make and talk about it somewhere in your profile. So if like next month when my Babe Meme store launches, I'm going to say, like right now it says Babe Meme, the hashtag. I want people to use that tag that when they're taking pictures of that product. So it's something that I will be reminding people every single time I post. Always check your hashtags before you use them. That means physically when you're making a new hashtag group, you always look at it to not only make sure, one, that it's not a banned hashtag, but it's a hashtag that you're more likely to rank for. And then finally, just check your hashtags. Go ahead. If you rank for them, according to your analytics, swipe up, and that way you can see which ones are working and which ones don't. Do you physically check every hashtag? Sometimes, yes, I do. And it's really funny because I keep waiting for them to create analytics that are like, these are your top hashtags. And I cannot find an analytics program that does all these things in one. So that's what I used to do. There might be a program out there that helps. If you guys find one, please tell me immediately. So like, if you're using like the same hashtags that have been working for you for months, there's no need to check them. But like with this class, now that we're changing your way about using hashtags, yes, I want you to physically check them, at least for the first week of you using them. Because that's the only way that you can tell if you're working or not. There's no other way. Command, that's a program. Jordan's like, Command! I just heard, Command, I have an Android. I literally just heard about this new app called Command because my friend Lisa Quinn was like talking about it in her stories. And I had to download it on my iPad because they don't make it for Android. I mean, they don't make it for Android. So I have to maybe, I don't know, in some apps that they have for iPhone, they don't have for iPad. So I don't even know if I can use it. So Jean is like, but then how do you know which one hashtag works? When you click on a hashtag, I click on her thing because it's open. She used the hashtag setting goals. So I click on setting goals, okay? And I have this right here. I have top posts. And there's two sections. There's most recent, and then there's top posts. So what you want to do in the top post section is did you rank for these coveted spots? And if you didn't rank, maybe it didn't work out for you. Because I'm saying, like, when you look at your analytics and you see that people were coming from your hashtags, that means one of two things. Either A, if it's a large number, like a weirdly large number, you definitely, means that people saw it. Now, if you got on the explore page, then it'll, instead of it saying hashtags, it'll say explore. There's a big difference between getting to the explore page and just ranking for the hashtags. Because if you're using a hashtag that only has, let's say 100,000 searches, and you use that hashtag like every time you post, eventually you're going to start seeing people coming in because there's not that many people using that hashtag. So when they go to most recent here on the page, they're going to see your artwork. It's going to happen because it's not too popular of a hashtag. And if they're checking in the first place, they're more likely going to see it in the recent section. Once you hit the top post section, then you could be on the explore page, which is that discover icon that you hit. That's the explore page. It doesn't necessarily mean like when you're in the top post that you get on the explore page. It's kind of like there's like tiers. Tiers is like, okay, you're in recent posts, everyone gets there. Then if you're super cool, you get on top posts. And then if you do well on top posts, then maybe you start to go on the explore page. It's got these kind of like things. Okay, so let's go into the don'ts of hashtags. Number 1, do not use the same hashtags every time because this is what's known as spammy behavior. I see this all the time where people just use the same hashtag group over and over and over and over again. Now, anything that the algorithm can catch as duplicate content is bad. So that means never copy and paste a caption, ever, and never use the same hashtags over and over again. Now, what I mean is you can use different hashtags in a different order, that's fine. But if Instagram is seeing that you're literally doing the same thing and it's just a copy and paste job, they're going to get mad at you and then you're not going to rank as much. So that's why it's really important. We're going to get into this on the next slide, which is creating different kinds of hashtag groups for different kinds of posts. And just to make sure that you're literally not copying and pasting every single post that you do. It's okay to have similar hashtags every once in a while, like every 4 posts has a different hashtag group. That's fine, but you just literally just don't want to be copying and pasting. So number 2 is talking about banned hashtags. Make sure your tags are not banned. There are a lot of hashtags like Valentine's Day, which I was like, what? And I found a link earlier and I'm gonna share it with you guys. This is a list of some 2018 banned hashtags. Check it out. There's some weird ones on there. So like things like hashtag TGIF, banned hashtag, hashtag babe, hashtag curvy, hashtag instamood, hashtag models, hashtag Valentine's Day, guys. So this is why you'll see something like Valentine's Day 2018. That hashtag is fine to use, but you just literally can't use Valentine's Day. The same way it's like model mayhem. You could do models mayhem as a hashtag, but you just can't do models. And this happens because so many people who have been using this hashtag have been reporting it to Instagram that eventually that hashtag just gets taken down completely. It's pretty much like if any company can kind of skew or sexualize a hashtag, they're going to. So Natalie's like, so I write all my hashtags and captions and notes and then I copy and paste them in Instagram, so that's bad? No, it's not bad, but it's only bad if you're using the same hashtags and captions every time. The simple act of copying and pasting, obviously nothing, that's not what I mean. I mean if like you're literally repeating the exact same kind of content, like the verbatim, the same content over and over again, that's considered spammy. So there's a lot of really weird ones, and this list is ever changing and ever growing to more and more banned hashtags. Like for me, for example, I had no idea hashtag weed was banned. I was like, what? So like at first when I started talking about weed, I thought it was hurting my account and I thought my followers hated me. And I was so confused why those posts didn't do very well. And then when I learned about banned hashtags, now I know to use smaller hashtags, more community-based hashtags, especially around weed, and that I can't just use hashtag marijuana, hashtag high, some of those other things that are banned. And my posts, out of all of the content that I create right now, it's my weed art that does the best because they have a really strong community around weed on Instagram. So Jordan's asking, can you use a few of the same hashtags a few days in a row? Yeah, you can use a few of the same hashtags. Like I said, guys, literally only if it's the same 20 fucking hashtags in every fucking post, bad. You can change it around a little bit. As long as it's not verbatim, you're fine. Heavens Mechanicus, they banned Kansas. They banned hashtag Kansas. What monsters made this happen? It's so messed up. That's why it's so important that you go into Instagram and you physically check your hashtag. So like, so this is how you know, right? I'm gonna put hashtag weed in here. Just weed. So this is why it's important. You have to physically click on the hashtag because when you look on Instagram, I'm like pointing, like you guys can fucking see where I'm pointing. It'll say like, oh, hey, this hashtag's been used 15 million times. It must be fine. No, you have to click on it. And it says top posts. Boom. Recent posts from weed are currently hidden because the community has reported some content that may not meet Instagram's community guidelines. Learn more. So you have to watch out for this. So anytime you see a banned hashtag, it'll always show top posts because that hashtag worked at one time, but you'll never see anything under the recent post section. And that's the biggest difference. Okay. 3, now this is something we talked about before, but don't use popular hashtags with more than 1 million searches very often. I kind of added that. You can use a really, really popular hashtag. I just don't want you to use only really popular hashtags, which the majority of you are doing. Just by me looking at your captions just now for the critique, a lot of you guys were making this mistake. So definitely don't be like hashtag animation, hashtag art, hashtag illustration, as the whole thing. We're going to figure out a way for you to create smaller hashtags that are not as popular, but still popular enough to help you get more eyes on your work and engagement. So obviously, if you're doing something like Inktober, of course, that's going to have more than 1 million searches. I think it does. And that's fine to use that hashtag. Or if you're doing something very specifically for like a holiday or an event or some sort of campaign, then yes, of course, use that hashtag. But I'm just saying, like, just make sure that the bulk of your hashtags aren't over 1 million searches. I usually have about maybe three or five of the bulk of my 30 hashtags being really popular, just because you never know. You never know. It's kind of like getting the more expensive lottery ticket for the bigger payout. It's kind of like the same thing. All right, so these are some things I want you to keep in mind. The hashtag do's and the hashtag don'ts. We really need to make sure that the hashtags we're using are only going to help our account and not hurt us. That's the main thing that I really want to make sure that's clear. All right, now let's actually talk about how to actually figure out how do we get these hashtags? What hashtags do we use? How do we do this? The key to finding better tags is figuring out what your audience interests are. And I know this sounds pretty like no shit, but a lot of us don't think to break it up in this way. So I want you to create different hashtag groups based on these three things. What products do you sell? So for example, if you sell enamel pins, then you would use smaller community tags like Pin Game Strong or hashtag Tailor Made, something like that. Or like if you make posters, then maybe you would start using like hashtag Interior Lovers, like this kind of thing. So if you sell a specific kind of product like t-shirts, enamel pins, stickers, prints, anything that's like a tangible product that you sell, then there's a community out there that has specific hashtags for that kind of product that you make. And the same thing obviously goes for services. So it's like, what services do you offer? You could use things like hashtag editorial illustration, hashtag chalk lettering, hashtag merch design, right? Because this is good for lots of reasons. A, it's really descriptive, and you have to think of especially when you're doing client work, you want to think of your Instagram as like, Instagram is Google. How do you search things on Google? Well, you type a keyword into Google search and you try to find what you need. Same thing goes for Instagram. If I'm looking for a chalk hand lettering artist, then it makes sense how I would find that person is I would type chalk hand lettering artist into a hashtag for Instagram and then find your work. So that's really, it works the same way. It's just trying to figure out the keywords for your services. This often works better than using more community hashtags, but they both can go really, really well together. And the last thing is, which I think is the most powerful, which we're going back to that question you had, Jordan, I think that was you. What subjects do you gravitate towards? So like if, let's say you always make really feminine content, you always use pink. Let's say that's just like a dominant color in your color palette. There's a hashtag out there that says, I have this thing with pink. And that's like a really nice popular hashtag that's not too popular, but it's popular enough. Like it has over 100,000 searches, which I think is a good starting point for hashtag searches. And it's right in the middle there. And it's really specific to the aesthetic of your work. And the same thing can be said if you're doing feminist art, like then obviously use the hashtag feminist art, or if you do portrait art, then use the hashtag portrait art. So that way it's really specific to the kind of services, the kind of message that you're creating, and the kind of products that you sell. So I really want you to be really specific. So like, for example, I have this post that I did this week, which I'll just show the larger version of because it's way better to see. So like, life is too short to not love the shit out of yourself. So I use things like hashtag self-love discovered, self-love club, self-love warrior, self-love first, self-care, love yourself, body positivity, mental health, body positivity, self-worth. Notice I'm not using a lot of lettering hashtags like most lettering artists do. Hashtag F your beauty standards, hashtag body love, honor my curves, plus size, celebrate my size, love yourself first, love yourself, chalk lettering. And then I start to go into the service, chalk lettering, chalk art, chalk boards, chalk artists, chalk sign, lettering art, lettering quotes, hand lettered quotes, custom lettering, lettering design, daily lettering, lettering practice. So it's definitely an example of, oh, hey, some of those are really popular, some of them are medium, some of them are super fucking niche, but you're going to have so much more luck actually gaining some traction using these hashtags than you would something else. So if I use my insights, I went ahead and I did really, really well for these hashtags. So I had a discovery of about 12,000 people, and the amount of impressions I got was about 17,000, and I actually had 755 people come to my profile from hashtags. So for me, that's actually a really, really high number. I normally, like, if I look at, pick a random thing in here, a picture of my boyfriend sleeping, my bed is calling, which I don't even know if I used hashtags on this one. No, I did. Oh, actually, that one did really well. Never mind, that's a bad example. That one had 9,000. Jesus, I didn't even know that. Okay, hold on. I'm gonna find a bad one. They're usually bad. Okay, so this one, I found a bad one. I swear to God, not every post I do is like perfect. Okay, so for this one, I used hashtags that were more around like the fact that I'm doing this via Apple Pencil, that I'm doing my iPad Pro is really service-based. But a lot of the hashtags I was using here, for the most part, are kind of popular. So I only got 16 hits from hashtags with this one. So it's like, in my experience so far with like me, like for the past year, like really focusing on social media and kind of having a different approach and how I use hashtags and captions and how I talk about myself and all those things, I noticed that if I talk more about the message than anything, it always does better. And that goes for the caption, and that definitely goes for hashtags. So if you talk about, like, if you're doing something for a brewery, it makes more sense for you to use brewery hashtags than it does for you to use chalk lettering hashtags. Now, I think it's always important to include those other hashtags in there, but you have 30. So like, just make sure if there is a direct message or a direct community of people that would enjoy that message, definitely pay attention to those hashtags first. Okay, so how you find hashtags is really quite easy. All right, so this is what you do to find hashtags, right? You definitely have to use your phone. You just have more capabilities on your phone than you do the desktop. So it's like, okay, like let's use the self-love, for example. So I'm going to type self-love, the hashtag. Automatically, it's going to recommend hashtags for me. So I definitely don't want to use like the 9 million one. So what I might do is, okay, self-love warrior, that's 59,000 posts versus, 10 million. So I'll click on that. So I'll check out some of the posts that they're using. And something like this, I want to make sure it's like, okay, do they ever rank for art? That's something that's really, really important, especially for when you're talking about the feelings behind things. So there's obviously, so I'm scrolling down to the recent searches. Okay, so people are using this hashtag that are creating art. So that makes me feel more comfortable to use it. There are certain hashtags that they will never rank just because it's art, because it just never ranks for art. So that's definitely something to be paying attention to. And on some pages, I don't think it does it on the desktop version of Instagram. Hold on, I'm checking. No, it doesn't. So on your phone version, not all the time, but sometimes when you're typing in the hashtag, you go ahead, you go to the page, and it'll tell you relevant hashtags that are similar in search quantity. And that's really helpful as well. And it's really just you kind of poking around like, okay, I want to talk about this. So then you go ahead and you find a hashtag. You write down a bunch of hashtags that don't have that much searches, and then you type those hashtags in, and then you find relative ones, and then you check them, and then you see if it's something that you would rank for, and then you try them, and then you trial and error. That's the best way to have, that's actually what we call a hashtag strategy. A strategy is not going to a website and typing a word, and then it regurgitates hashtags for you. Those websites and those functionality never fucking work because they always use the most popular tags. And also it's the same way that all these other people who are using that app are also finding their hashtags. So you're just getting more competition with yourself for all the other people that are probably pulling their hair out as well when it comes to Instagram. So I know that these ideas might seem a little tedious. It's because they have to be fucking tedious because it's a fucking strategy. This is the way that you can actually start to use hashtags to your benefit and know what works and what doesn't, instead of just letting a computer and an AI figure it out for you and you never look back to check and then you wonder why you're not growing any followers. Since hashtags and reposts are literally the only way to get followers. Without that, there's no way for anyone to discover you unless you're like on a fucking podcast or you're like doing a conference where someone is actually like giving you a shout out. Other than that's really the only functionality that we can rely on to try to attract new viewers. Okay, so we're trying to find our better hashtags. One really easy way that we can find them is just by stealing them from our competitors. Yay, stealing. I love stealing. It's so great. I steal so much for my art. So you really need to go ahead and find other artists like yourself that are having the same kind of message as you, that offer the same kind of services as you, that offer the same kind of products. More than likely, there's probably a bunch of artists that do all of the same things as you. So it's really, and you probably are already following those people as well. So definitely go ahead and look at their posts and see what kind of hashtags they're using and take advantage of it. Like, they did some of this work for you and now you don't have to. How great is that? I'm using an example of Sarah Day Arts. She has grown her account very quickly recently, so I've definitely had my eye on her for a while. And also, she is a guest in my Women of Illustration podcast. And she talks a lot about the same things that I do. She talks about, you know, self-worth and self-love and anxiety. She also talks about, you know, she does like her weed art pieces. She does have a chronic illness, so she talks about that kind of thing. Talks about body positivity, these kinds of things, similar subject matters. She sells t-shirts, she sells enamel pins, she sells stickers, and we literally have the same exact demographic when it comes to client work as well. So for me, even though like I have, you know, almost 25,000 followers and she has 7, she's still my competitor because I'm not ranking her in terms of how many followers I have. I'm ranking her in how much engagement she gets on her posts, how her frequency of posting, her general aesthetic. Like, if her art is as good as mine, she's a fucking competitor. It doesn't fucking matter that she's got 7,000 and I have 25. That's not even related to me, because at the end of the day, it's about the work. So for me, she was just such a perfect example of a competitor. Yeah, so for her, I found really great ones like Bong Bath. I would have never thought in a million years to use the hashtag Bong Bath. I was like, what? Things like girls who smoke weed. It seems so obvious now. Like hashtag hemp heals, hashtag girls gays, hashtag 420 friendly, hashtag cannabis art. I've been using weed art, and cannabis art is such a better hashtag that actually works a lot better for me. So I've been using a hashtag that literally means the same thing. Cannabis art, weed art, but the cannabis art one just performs better for me just from trial and error. And I would have never even ever thought to use that hashtag if I hadn't seen her using it. And the same thing goes for some of her smaller tags, like when she's just talking about like makers and art just generally. Things like hashtag makers movement, hashtag crafternoon, hashtag makers academy, and carve out time for art. Like, I would never think to use those kind of community-based hashtags, where for so long I was just using like hashtag lettering practice, hashtag, good type, hashtag blah, blah, blah. Like, I wasn't thinking of new hashtags. And I think that's something that we kind of do to ourselves a lot. Like, we use the same fucking hashtags for years. We don't even think like, oh, should I change them? Should I try new ones? Like, of course you should. So there are a lot of people out there who just straight up don't use hashtags. Obviously, don't worry about it because there's nothing to steal from them. Some people have a different approach to gaining new followers where hashtag has nothing to do with it. You'll see this obviously on more popular pages. Like, where like once you hit like 100,000, some people they're like, fuck it, there's no reason for me to use hashtags. People who have sensitive accounts, like anything about weed art or sex or porn or anything like that, they don't use hashtags as fear of, okay, I might have posted something a month ago, but now one of the hashtags I use in that post is banned, and now that's going to hurt my overall account. So there is lots of strategies in place why people just straight up don't use hashtags. So they're like, hey, if it can't hurt me, but it can't help me, is how a lot of people are thinking about hashtags, especially more popular accounts that start to get let's just say lots of trolls. Let's just leave it at that. Something to, obviously look for people who actually do use hashtags, which is hard. Like, when I was doing this morning myself, I found like anyone who had more than 10,000 followers, I was having a hard time finding people who even still use hashtags. So definitely, if you're one of those people who doesn't have that many followers, you obviously have to grow somehow. So Jordan's asking, so how often should we be changing up the hashtags? I've been afraid of this, so I usually use nearly all different hashtags each post, and then maybe recycle some of them every week or never. Okay. I do it like every month, pretty much. Like, usually around the end of the month, beginning of the month, I do what I like to call like a planning day or something like that, where I'm planning like, okay, what are all the campaigns I need to do this month? What client work do I have on the schedule? Like, am I even going to have time to do all the things I said I was going to do this month, kind of thing? And then I will also plan my hashtag strategy around that. And for the most part, I usually repeat hashtags. I would say 10% from last month's hashtags I'll continue to use, but I'm always trying to use different ones, especially since there's all these new communities popping up. But you don't need to get so crazy and so anal where like every single post you're using a completely different set of hashtags. I think that's a little bit unnecessary of amount of work. Somewhere in the middle, I think is just fine. So Lena's asking, so what's the average for numbers we should look at for popularity? Like 500K? It's, for me, I think a good ratio is anywhere from 100,000 searches, less than 1 million. And like, I'll go ahead and I'll do it if it's at 900. But if you have, let's say, a really, really small following, like you just started, then I would actually go for like the super non-competitive hashtags. Like if you have less than maybe 1,000 followers, I maybe would say like, don't do anything more than 500,000. So it just really depends. And obviously this is different all the time. So I think it's just kind of like explore and see what works best for you. Because even though we're all in this together and we're all artists, we still have completely different niches. We have different aesthetics, different styles, different voices. And we should be taking advantage of all the niche communities that already exist that happen to fall under the container that is our brand voice, if you will. So there's lots of options out there. As long as you're being specific and niche, just keep reminding yourself that specific niche. It's all about the audience. What is the audience I'm trying to cater to? Who am I trying to attract? You're just concerned Instagram's going to think you're spamming. Yeah, you guys are, I think you're getting a little too worried. As again, if it's not like a literal, like I'm using the same fucking 30 hashtags in every fucking post, then like you're going to be spammy. But if you're using just a couple of the same hashtags over and over again, you're fine. Like for example, like some accounts, they use their branded hashtag in every single post. That's not, they're not going to get in trouble for that. You know what I'm saying? It's just like if it's an obvious big chunk of hashtags that are the same fucking hashtags for like 2 years and you're wondering why you're not growing, that's why. So again, this advice is just like somewhere in the middle is always going to be my answer. Like don't get too fucking crazy with it and don't not try. Like somewhere in the middle, you're going to be so much more successful than so many other people who aren't even thinking about any of this shit. Going back to looking at competitors' tags, we're asking ourselves the same questions. These questions and these questions are the same fucking thing. So it's just like, okay, what pages talk about the same subject? And I am a really big fan of finding like curated pages versus artist pages because I just find that they have more of the hashtags and stuff that work for my account because they're thinking from the mindset of it's all about interests, right? It's all about the subject matter. It's not about the art. And I think that makes such a huge difference in why so many accounts get so popular. It's so easy to gain momentum on Instagram if you have one message and it's unified every fucking time. Like Refinery, right? For example, like they're all about feminism and body positivity and the women's movement. And every single fucking post is about that. And there's a lot of pink and it's obviously for women. If they started doing like, here's a deodorant commercial for men or here's a fucking basketball or something, that would be really fucking confusing. And it wouldn't work anymore. So it's like, I like to use them as an example, not like just as the kind of places you should be looking for. I actually don't even think they use that many hashtags. Let's think of it like this. You also want to see what hashtags your competitors are using, and you also want to see who they're trying to target, and more specifically communities. Like lettering artists, something that I found very interesting this year is a lot of artists aren't really using the community hashtags from like Good Type or Type Matters or the Daily Type, like really popular curated pages for hand lettering. And I've noticed that there's been all these new communities, popping up around hand lettering, and more people are trying to attract those communities so that way they can get reposted. Now, this is great, obviously, when you use a community-based hashtag that is for a repost. This makes sense because not only could you possibly get reposted by that account because you use their specific branded hashtag, but also there must be other artists that are using that hashtag and are looking at that hashtag for inspiration from other artists. So then it makes sense to use that hashtag for both of those reasons. Okay, Danger's like, do you have any suggestions for curated accounts that we should check out or how we should look for them? You look for curated accounts the exact same way you look for hashtags. You just go like, what am I looking for? Self-love. It's just a good one. Self-love. So it's going to give me suggestions for things like the Self-Love Club. Like, okay, recipes for self-love, self-love mantras. Like it'll show up. And then you go to one of these pages. Okay, so this girl, right, Self-Love Club. This is her personal account. And sometimes she doesn't really use art or show anything. This is just her personal account. And so I'm like, okay, this account might not work for me, but what I could do if I hit this little button right here. So instead, right next to the follow button, there's this little down button. This is going to show you other accounts that are similar. And so I just keep doing that. I'm like, okay, what about Self-Love Live? What about Self-Care Forever? What about Body Posipanda. So I'm like, okay, what about Olivia? Does she have a branded hashtag? Can I look at her thing? Oh, look, and she uses the hashtag mental self-awareness. That's literally what I do like all day when I'm looking for hashtags. Like, here we go. It costs $0 to be kind. Self-care is for everyone. They have 132 followers. Obviously, this is the kind of account that is reposting other artists' work. I can recognize some of my friends just immediately in the feed. She just uses her mental health hashtags. So it's like, these are, you found like similar things. It's really just like figuring out what your keyword is, typing it into Instagram, looking at similar hashtags, looking at similar curated pages, looking at similar brands, and then just kind of looking at all that information and making sure what's going to work and what's not going to work for your account. It's just like it's just searching Instagram. Like, you have to be a user in order to know what kinds of hashtags and captions and stuff are going to attract more of the users you're trying to get in your account. You have to use Instagram in order to figure out how to, I guess, abuse it in a way. Someone also told me that if you actually engage in those hashtags you're using, Instagram notices and you get higher engagement if you use that tag. I wouldn't be surprised if that was true. That makes sense. I don't know if that's true. I've never heard that before, but that totally makes sense, Lena. Jordan's like, yes, that has worked really well for me actually, but I think it comes down to other people in the hashtag are noticing you too when you do that. Yeah, that probably, I think you're both right. Studio says, I've been too scared to tag other accounts. They're so used to it at this point though, Danny. Like, curated accounts, they get tagged all the time. I get like 50 tags a day from Web Illustration. I'm never offended by someone using a tag. Okay, but you used it twice this week and my engagement was higher on those posts. I also did better on hashtags on those posts. So should I take the dive and tag Refinery? So Refinery does have a specific hashtag. I think it's called like R29 repost or something like that. And it's like a specific hashtag that artists use, pretty much giving Refinery permission to repost their artwork. Like Sarah Day Arts here, she pretty much uses that she used that hashtag in all of her posts until Refinery reposted her. And I used that hashtag, I think like maybe 5 times, and then they reposted my artwork. So sometimes you can get reposted just by simply using their branded hashtag. But I think it's a good idea to tag, because it's showing community. Anytime you do that where you're tagging accounts physically in the image or tagging accounts in the description, that only helps you. It's only going to help because it's showing that you're a bigger part of the community, that you're trying to talk to other people and not just at them. So that stuff does help. Oh, you're talking about your Refinery 29 post? Yeah. So like for the Refinery 29, which I'll just get into it. So Refinery 29, love them. I've had a long 6-month love affair with Refinery where I followed them. I immediately reached out and DM'd them and told them how much I love their account and the kind of work that they're posting. I put them on my stalker watch, which means like anytime I talk to them, I flag. You could flag DMs, so that way you can like find them easier. Because I get so many DMs a day, it's so easy to get lost in those things. So I flag it. Then I turn post notifications on for that particular page. So anytime they post something, I get a notification. I go to it, I like it, and I comment on it only if I like it. Because I don't like to be fake. I don't like to give a fake comment if I don't mean it. And I did that for off and on for like a month or two. And then I started to use the hashtag more often. And then once I felt like they knew who I was, I DM'd them before, I'd comment a few times on their thing, then I just literally asked them. And I made that piece, which I can show you, because they actually tagged me, so I can actually like easily find it. So this guy. So, it only got 9,000 likes. So I had actually sent them a DM with this piece of artwork and sent them like, hey, I posted this on my profile today. It actually did really, really well and people are really enjoying it. They thought it was really funny. I think this would be something that would do really well on your page. I know your guys' content calendar is full, but I just wanted to reach out and tell you that I gave you full permission to repost this piece. I went ahead and used your brand hashtag. Here it is right here. Hashtag R29regram is their hashtag. And yeah, and then it's so funny because this piece is like over 2 months old, but they must get like so many people reaching out to them to get reposted, so many tags, so many DMs, that it took them 2 months to even be like, oh, we don't have anything on our content calendar. I'll go ahead and repost Dina's work, right? So it's the long game when it comes to sometimes getting reposted. And I wouldn't say you need all that legwork for every place you want to get reposted, but when someone has over 2 million followers, like this is a quite quite a few. This is the largest account that I've ever been reposted on in my fucking life. And this happened this week or last week. So it did take quite a bit of romance. I had to woo Refinery29 to have them repost my work. So you don't have to do that much elaborate footwork every time you want to get reposted. But if they do have a large account, it does make more sense to have a longer woo period, if you will. Did I see a lot of growth in followers from that? Nope. I did not. I think I maybe got 30 followers from it. It was actually kind of fucked up. And I'll tell you why. And this is why, and we're going to get into this not next week, but I think the week after. So look at this. This is what they did wrong. They hid my name. So first of all, they said tag a friend to remind them of who the fuck they are. Space, double tap the link in my bio for a playlist, pick me up, and then they tag me. They don't put letter shop in the beginning. So it's less of a call to action for their users to click on my name. So very few people did. And also, I think because it took them so long to repost this, I don't think this is a strong representation of my artwork. So if you were to see this as my artwork, right? Just from a normal marketing perspective, and then you click on my account and you see weed, you see these like portrait illustrations, I feel like there might be a disconnect for some people. Like, because I'm not, overly feminist or, like I obviously talk about feminism a lot, but like not so much recently, that they're going to judge me on the content that I'm making now. Like, look how long ago I made that piece, right? Like, this was a while. This was like the last piece I made in my old style, I would say, like when it was mostly lettering and not so much illustration. So I feel like the expectation was broken. So that's why I think it's important where if you are asking for someone to repost your work, that you're very specific with them. Like, make sure you tag me, make sure you talk about me in the first line, and make sure it's a piece of artwork that currently represents the art that you're making now. So like now, if I do something like reaching out to an account to repost my Babe meme series, for example, that post is going to do so much better because they click on it, they go to my account, the expectation is the same. Oh, here are more examples of Babe meme. Okay, I'm definitely going to follow. Now, I have no idea how many profile clicks I got or any of the analytics, I didn't ask for it, but like, that's what I'm assuming. Or it could just be like, no one fucking liked my art. That could straight up just be the answer as well. I don't know. But I could only guess and try to take like rational explanations of like why I didn't get a bunch of followers. It was pretty disappointing, actually. I was like, oh, Refinery posted my stuff, and it's like 20 followers. I was like, God damn, that's bad. Like, okay. It's just really interesting, I find. And there's some accounts out there that all they do is repost other people's work. And sometimes they just don't get a lot of likes. It could be any number of things. Maybe they didn't post at a peak time of the day. Maybe that artwork just wasn't representing what you're making now. Maybe it was offensive. Maybe you didn't have as much clarity. It could be so many things. Maybe they used a bad hashtag on it and so no one saw it. Like, it could be any number of things. What about sales? No, nothing with sales. How can you command the tags in the first line for such a big account like that, though? I mean, you have to think about it like this, Lena. Like, that's your copyright. This is your art. Just because a big brand wants to use that art doesn't mean that you're losing any power here. They literally took my art that they did not pay for, reposted it, and then used it to their own advantage. They went ahead and did the Instagram scheme, which is, hey, tag someone that reminds you of this. That doesn't fucking help me. When they have people tagging their comments, that doesn't help me at all. That helps them get more exposure for that content, so they could at least credit me properly to do that. Like, they could have just been like art by letter shop, tag, and then go into it, and then people would have experienced more follows. So there's nothing wrong with asking people. Just because someone has 2 million followers, that doesn't mean like, oh, they're so fucking important, I can't have them use my art in the right way. Like, it's still your art. They don't own it. They didn't pay you for it. And like, even more so if like you decide to have a promoted post where you're physically paying that company money to post that artwork, of course you have say over how it's shown. It's still your work. Just because they're a big influencer, I don't fucking care. Your big deal doesn't make me any less of a deal. You know what I'm saying? These are wild factors to consider. And that's sucky that you didn't get much from that repost. It's fine. It happens. Nothing I can do about it. I went ahead and I even reached out to them and was like, hey, You know, I really appreciate you guys reposting. I sent them like a video and everything. And then I sent them like, hey, would you mind posting it in your stories, because as like a second chance type of thing. And that way they could just like literally share the stories and just tag me in the stories, because people are so much more likely to click on someone who's tagged in a story than they are someone who's tagged in a description on a page. That's something I've actually found. So when we get into promotion, I highly recommend if someone, because normally people have a cheaper rate to get reposted in their stories than they do their grid, but sometimes stories do well, like do better and perform better in terms of getting followers than they do in the feed. Just very interesting. We'll get into it. There's more stuff to go into, guys. When people tap on the @ tags, does that count as engagement for you? Yes. Yeah, anytime anyone does anything on like they click on a tag, they click on a hashtag, they comment, they like, they share, any button that they click that does a thing is considered an engagement on your side, for sure. You did a lot of work to get a repost. Is that the strategy a lot of people use? I'm assuming. I mean, most people's strategies are just to ask, but I always try to think like, because I have a curated account and because so many people ask me for reposts, I just put myself like in their shoes. I'm just like, oh, well, how would I like to be asked to be for a repost? What would make the most sense for me as a user? So that's what I think. I have no idea if that's what other people do. I've read a couple articles and that's what they say to do, but I don't actually know. I've never actually like gone to a conference and asked people, but that seems to be straightforward. Like, hey, total fucking stranger, it would be really weird for me just to be like, hey, can I have a favor? What's your name? Like, that'd be really awkward, but it makes much more sense to be like, introduce yourself, get to know them, interact with them, because they're doing you a fucking favor, and probably for free. You could at least be like their friend for a little bit and engage with them, so that way they feel more comfortable or more excited to repost your work, you know? To me, it just was common sense. Like, it just being a polite person. Did you tell them that, though? No, I did. I didn't tell them, like, hey, I'm trying to remember. No, I did tell them. First I sent them a video message thanking them for reposting it. And then after like an hour or two, and I saw that I didn't really get a lot of followers, then I went ahead and I reached out. I told them that the account didn't do that well. And I think it's because they didn't put my username high enough. And also I would appreciate if they posted in stories. And they never responded. So I tried. Jordan's like, when you reach out to them and explain that this posted well for you, do you tell them the analytics of the post? Okay, so like if you pay, for example, if you pay money to get reposted, then you should 100% always get the analytics of how that post performed, for sure. Definitely 100%. I think it is kind of rude, like if someone reposted your work for free to ask for the analytics. I mean, I've never done it. Maybe it's not rude. I just try to consider like, hey, you did me the favor of doing it for free. Maybe if it's like a smaller account, but they're just so busy and they must get so many DMs. I feel like that's such an ask, but I don't know. I've never tried. I've never asked for analytics for someone who reposted my work that I didn't pay for. Okay, so yeah. So when someone pays me money to get posted on Women of Illustration, they always get a screenshot of my analytics after the first 24 hours. And then I tell them how many clicks they got in Instagram stories. Just because that's what I would want if I was paying for a post. So I always like to treat others like how I'd like to be treated in any sort of exchange or customer service situation. Let's review, because we've gone over a lot of stuff and I kind of want to go over it just because it's so much information. Okay, hashtags, do's and don'ts. Use all 30 hashtags every time. I think that the main takeaway here is just check your hashtags beforehand, actually physically type them into Instagram, see if they're banned, and just see, you could obviously see by looking at the content whether or not it's going to work for you or not. If you look for a hashtag and there's no art to be seen, then most likely you shouldn't be using that hashtag. Also, we want to keep in mind is the amount of searches that hashtag has. We don't want to go for anything that's too popular. And more importantly, we just want to be careful that we're not repeating ourselves too often. We can repeat ourselves a little bit, but for the most part, our captions should always 100% be completely written over and new every time. And our hashtags, we just need to learn to experiment with them a little bit. And more importantly, check the analytics of those hashtags if we're finding one posted particularly well and a lot of traffic was coming from hashtags, because then it's a missed opportunity to not figure out what happened. If you do it too late, for example, like if you posted and then you look at your analytics and it did well, but you never thought to check which hashtag did well, then you'll never know, because then after a day, of course, your post isn't going to be there anymore. It's going to be buried, and then you'll never know. Then we're getting into, well, how do we find better hashtags? Well, we have to figure out what our audience is interested in the first place. And for the most part, we don't want to be using hashtags like hashtag illustration, hashtag art. We want to be using hashtags that make more sense with the meaning behind our artwork. So like, what are the subject matters that you're talking about? So let's say like always looking for something good to half watch. Okay, so I did things like used hashtags. Okay, what's the meaning behind this post? Well, it's who am I talking to? Who's the audience? Well, I'm talking to people who are like home buddies, people who are generally pretty lazy, people who watch TV all day, people who love Netflix and just binge TV. So you start to see hashtags, things like hashtag home buddy, hashtag home buddy life, hashtag lazy days, hashtag lazy girl, hashtag Netflix and chill, hashtag screen addiction, those types of things, because I'm talking about the meaning behind the message. Now, when we're talking about services, then it makes more sense to be like, oh, I just did a hand-lettered chalk sign. It makes sense for me to go ahead and put like chalk illustration, chalk sign, chalk, and add a couple of those. Now, it's really interesting though, because when you're talking about a specific service like branding or packaging or anything like that, there's not that many hashtags for it. So I think services, if it's a specific service like a hand-lettered packaging or custom illustrated packaging or something like that, instead of you just using hashtag packaging, be like illustrated packaging, for example. You're not going to find too many of those hashtags, but it's important to include them, even if they're popular for services, because they're so niche to what you're offering, and can also help someone who's potentially looking to hire for that service find you a little bit more easier. Last is, what are the products that we're selling? There are so many built-in communities of makers that are finding each other through these community-based hashtags that are all about what they're making, whether it's they're making enamel pins or they're making t-shirts or they're making posters. There is a community of thousands of hashtags of those people who are specifically making that kind of work. So it's important to, target obviously other artists and users and competitors, but you also want to be considering what hashtags normal users will be using. So using the example of posters, if you use hashtag poster design, that most likely is going to attract clients and fellow artists. But if you do something like hashtag posters for my bedroom or hashtag, let's say, interior design or like hashtag wall art for my home or something like that, then that's probably going to be a hashtag most likely used by a consumer that is trying to find art to fill their homes. So I'm just trying to make sure that you're thinking about both sides. We just tend to only post hashtags to attract other artists, and we need to start thinking about, who are the everyday people that we're trying to attract? We obviously all have a niche already within us. We just need to define who those people are and just do a couple searches on Instagram to figure out what hashtags those people are already using. And so when we start to talk about competitors, it's really just probably the people that you're following right now. Look at their accounts, see what hashtags they're using, if they are using any. And you'll quickly find that a lot of people are doing hashtags wrong, just even based on our first slides of the do's and don'ts of hashtags. They're using the same ones every single post. They're using really popular ones. And you're going to notice that probably hashtags aren't helping them out that often. But if you're looking at accounts that, still have less than 10,000 followers, you might stumble on a few people who have done this research already, and you can go ahead and steal the tags that they're using. No harm, no foul. Thanks for the help and saving me hours of time, right? We might as well. So then we're just, instead of us searching hashtags, we're searching pages. So literally typing the same things into Instagram to find these people, but now we're just going ahead and looking at pages and looking at that people that you might like and follow. And a lot of you might be thinking, well, how do I even find my competitors in the first place? So if I click on the design tip, which is if this was my account, I could do this to myself as well and see other accounts that are my competitors. This is the easiest way to find it, because then Instagram's already being like, hey, these are accounts like yours, also known as competitors. So you can do that right now on your own account. I just can't show you on the desktop version of Instagram. So we can start looking at pages, the recommended pages, to find similar subject matters, especially looking at curated accounts that are very focused on one message, which might just be the topic of the latest art piece that you posted on Instagram. And then talking about what are artists that have the same services as you and what pages sell the same things. Especially if you're looking at really popular brands that only sell, I keep using enamel pins just because it's such a strong community behind that, where you can find those community specific hashtags. let's talk about our homework, okay? Homework alert, make hashtag groups. All right, so I want you to go ahead and I want you to make as many hashtag groups as you think make the most sense for your account. Most importantly, I want you to focus on tags around the topics that you discuss. This is not only important just to figure out what your hashtags are, but this is also important to reinforce what the fuck are you trying to say with your art. Even if you're looking for client work, even if you're selling products, there still has to be an overarching message of what you're offering. There has to be a subject line in there somewhere, or else your art wouldn't get any engagement. Art doesn't just get engagement because it's good. It's gets engagement because people relate to it and they feel something because of it. There's a meaning behind it. So think about like your 3 main topics. What are the 3 things that you always talk about in your work? Like you just keep coming back to? Is it feminism? Is it like I'm really into craftsmanship and just the, you know, the psychology behind making and the creativity that goes into the day and day, or am I really nostalgic and I'm all about the 80s and 90s and I'm just really trying to make you go back. I'm a motherfucking time machine, and like that's your main topic, right? And then I want you to find tags that represent those topics and try to find as many as you can. You don't have to find all 30 for each one of these topics, but I want you to start thinking about it. So like for me, I use weed tags, right? And not just weed tags, but tags that are the cannabis community, but that are targeted specifically at women. So I have things like girl gays, girls who smoke. I have women in cannabis, women of cannabis, right? And then I have other things like marijuana movement, stoner society, 420 friendly. And then if I, was really focused on craftsmanship, then I would use more art tags like Creative Daily, Happy Art, Happy Artist Movement, Crafternoon, Makers Academy, Carve Out Time for Art, Tumblr Aesthetic, which is a new hashtag that I would have never found unless I was like looking at this one girl's account. Hashtag Pop Surrealism, Brute Submission, Pop Love. Like I would have never found these hashtags if I hadn't like actually looked at my competitors and stuff. And then of course I have to have my lettering tags, and I've spent a lot of time figuring out the perfect tags to use that are just right and are a little bit different from the ones I've been using my whole fucking career. That's usually the hardest part. It's like how to get out of the habit of using the hashtags that you're so used to using, especially like not knowing like if those hashtags were even working in your favor or not. So before the end of class, I want you to go ahead and I want everyone in the class to tell me what your main topics that you're going to be researching this week, what are your services if you have them, and what products you offer if you have them, just to go ahead and get something started. So that way tomorrow you can go ahead and start looking up some hashtags that make the most sense, but at least you'll have a starting point. Jordan's like, the related artists to myself have a style nothing like mine and they have over 70K followers. Yeah. Well, you have to think of it like, artists all have their own specific style, but we can find commonalities in the things that we're trying to say and what we're offering. So it's like, obviously if you could look up a ton of different artists talking about cannabis art or doing different cannabis art, and they'll all be in their unique styles that might look completely different from yours, but you're still saying, a similar message. So Heaven's Mechanic is like animation curators. So you're in a situation where you're trying to attract other artists. So Noelle's like mindful art making, editorial illustration, and art prints for sale. Okay, no one's talking about topics. I would never hire you for editorial illustration, and I would never buy a print if I didn't identify what the message you were trying to say. What is the message behind the things that you're offering? Not just the things that you're offering, because this is where you're going to get the most engagement. I want you guys to pepper in hashtags for services and products, but your topics of discussion, the message behind your art, is the thing that's going to help you the most with your aesthetic, with your hashtags, with your captions, and with your following. All right, Jean is like going out of your comfort zone, branding and illustration, prints and greeting cards. Okay, so like putting yourself out there. Okay, that's a good feeling. Maybe try to figure out some hashtags around that, Jean. Marla's like art psychology, serendipity, art tools. I don't know how serendipity's a feeling. I think you have to elaborate on that one for me. Jessica's like aerial artists, black and white illustration, circus themes. Okay, I like this. So you talked about the aesthetic and you talked about the message, which is all around like a circus theme. I love that. Lisa's like, okay, her services or online courses and teaching. Yes, there's a lot of really good educational hashtags you should be using as a teacher for sure. 3D lettering, learning lettering, Yes. Also talking about Procreate. Okay, so Lisa, your focus is to only attract other artists, right? So then that makes sense. But I do think that it is a huge mistake for any artist or creative to only attract artists. I think that's a huge mistake, because let's say for some reason you fuck up, right? You say the wrong thing, it gets tweeted, and then it ruins your reputation in the art community. Then your whole business is fucked and you have no way to make a living. So that's why I think it's really important where, like, let's say I really fuck up my reputation in the cannabis industry, I can always just switch industries and I can make art somewhere else. But when you make your priority education and it's just to other artists, then you might find yourself kind of in a corner if you're not talking about anything else aside from creativity and the struggles of the artist. So learn from me. Learn from me. You make so much more money once you start having a message behind your art as well as doing education. One just serves the other. Dara's like, okay, overcoming adversity. I love this. Addiction, eating disorders. These are all great. Just pretty much having positive vibes, meaningful quotes. Yes, I think that's great, Dara. I think you have a really good idea of the kind of subject matters that you gravitate towards. And there's definitely a ton of communities out there that use hashtags to attract those exact same people. So I think that's great. Lena's, okay, talking about travel, being honest. So I really don't like when you say things like I'm trying to, because that's not a feeling, that's not an interest. People don't have an interest in being authentic. That doesn't really make sense. What you might need to rephrase it in self-help, like it's maybe people are just trying to figure out who they are more than trying to be honest, because it's really hard to find hashtags for authenticity since people seem to be using that word wrong a lot lately. But neon art, I think, is great. Services you offer is editorial and commissions. For products as a wallpaper, I don't really consider wallpaper as a product unless you're literally making wallpaper that you put on your wall. Digital wallpapers are normally free, so I don't think that's something that you would need to worry about unless you're just offering like a free wallpaper. Then it makes sense to use like hashtag free wallpaper. Okay, Jordan, colorful watercolors, kitchen art. So mostly talking about food. Yes, there's obviously lots of really good hashtags for food. Women in food specifically. Prints, editorial. Yes. Jake, gaming, mental health awareness. Yeah, Jake, I'm not worried about you at all. That is like nostalgia, but like 80s and 90s toys, films. Okay, so you're talking more about like the lifestyle of the 80s and 90s. So really talking about pulp culture is what you're referring to. So yeah, there's tons of pulp culture nostalgic fucking hashtags for you. Seraphina's like all about the fucking Judaism and women and empowerment. Yes, I think, okay, that's really clear for me. Studio Dodge is like, okay, she's looking for more feminist publications, sexual health accounts, stop fronts. Yeah, shop fronts. Yes, that makes sense. Danger Tam, illustrated hilarious moments of life, gross humor. Okay, gross humor. I think you could find something, but you got to be really careful when you're just trying to be funny, because you can't use hashtags that are just like funny or like, oh, this made me laugh. You have to be specific on why it's funny. But there's definitely things like dark humor hashtags. You could definitely use something like that because it's more specific to the kind of humor that you're offering. Yes, Lisa, mom. There we go. Now we're getting into it. Yes, talking about motherhood, talking about it being introverted, being more sarcastic. Yes. Jamina, yes. Childhood dreams. Vulnerability. Maybe you could talk more about like whimsical. I feel like if you're really just, unless you're just really trying to attract like a children's market, that's something to consider. Getting over perfectionism. You can't do an entire account around, that's so niche. That's like crazy. Like that's a little bit too much. Empowering words onto vintage items. Are we going for vintage hashtags? Or are we going more for like empowerment hashtags? So there's definitely tons of like empowered women, like, you know, empowering women, like there's so many, like there's a lot of like, but like I want you to try to find something a little bit more niche instead of just using things like hashtag inspirational, hashtag motivational, just trying to make it a little bit more niche. Perfectionism from what? Are you trying to go for like a more of a minimalistic lifestyle? Because that's a separate niche within avoiding perfectionism. So it's just like Noelle's like creepy girls, fat, curvy bodies, body horror cycling. Okay, that's cool. I love that. All right, so I think your gears are turning in a completely different way. Now, I know all of this sounds really scary. It's so much information in such a short amount of time. Like it took me, I say 6 months because I've been really honing down, but this has been years in the making, this course and all the things that we're learning, because it's not just about like, how can I be successful on Instagram, it's just like, what the fuck am I doing as an artist? What is the message that I'm trying to say? How are people going to remember me? Like, if they will at all. And it's so hard to ask these questions. And I know it must feel like you're full of anxiety, and it's going to be, because it's fucking hard. You need to get through this. You've been avoiding this for so long. Like, I was avoiding it myself because I didn't want to ask these hard questions. Like, who am I trying to target? And I could only think of things like demographics and age and location. I wasn't getting into like the real, like, what the fuck do these followers want from me? Like, what am I trying to get from them? What am I trying to give them in exchange? And then what I really do feel like once I figured that out, and I was really, really thinking about what the message behind my art was, is I saw this change overnight. Tons of sales, tons of client inquiries, tons of new followers, because I wasn't just trying to attract my inner circle of artist friends. I was trying to branch out and actually reach a community of people who aren't artists that can more appreciate my skills because they don't have them themselves. And that's really what we should have been doing the whole fucking time. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this 2-hour lecture all about your hashtag strategy. A lot of really good information in there. You guys had great questions coming in. I'm really glad that I can be the person to like confront your fears like this and like get your anxiety up and running, because you need that shit to really push through it, and you're gonna feel so amazing after this course is done, because you're just gonna know what the fuck you're doing with this whole art life thing. So I want you guys to be working on your homework, going ahead and figuring out what your hashtag groups are going to consist of, mainly around that focus, those topics of focus, and then your services and products if you offer them. And then when we come back later in our next class, we're finally going to be talking about how to get featured. Yes, featured. I love getting featured by big accounts. So we're going to talk about everything I kind of went over a little bit today, how to go in for the stock and ask, how to go ahead and curate your work better to get reposted, how to have a script lined up so that way you know how to ask to be reposted in the first place. You don't come off like a total creep. How to follow up when they just totally fucking ignore you. And then we're going to get into some paid advertising. So we always want to try to go in for the free ask whenever possible. But you also want to be able to be prepared if promotion, like, you know, paying $20 for a repost is something that is, you know, first of all, in your budget, but also like you go about it the right way, that you are increasing your chances of success with doing that kind of paid advertising on Instagram. And I still wholeheartedly agree. And I've been doing experiments leading up to this point where I'm going to be showing you examples of, hey, this is an example of me paying money for native advertising on Facebook or Instagram, same thing. And hey, here's an example of me doing a repost paid advertisement, and look at the difference. And in my experience, the paid repost always does better because it's more targeted to the exact people you're trying to attract. Even though you have those same parameters on Instagram, when you're picking out an advertisement, it's just so much more refined, and it comes from a place of trust, since you're being advertised by someone you actually know versus someone you don't. And I think that's the biggest difference. So I really hope this was helpful. Thanks for being my friends on the internet. Please keep tagging me or using the hashtag InstaNightSchool in your posts. I do look at them. And if you guys have any questions, remember, as always, definitely go into the Discord and mention me. You guys type so much in here that it's impossible for me to keep up with all of the conversations that are being had here. But if you have a specific question, please mention me, which is at Lettershop, and then I'll get the notification and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I will see you later. Goodbye, my friends. Goodbye, goodbye. Bye, 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 bye.